Tanse, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Elders, Sacred Spaces, Elders Storytelling, honoring our elders and our stories of living culture. My name is Tanis Peranto. I'm the Events and Media Manager at the American Indian Community House. I'm here with my nephew. Making an appearance today. Our special guest is not my nephew, but today our elder special guest is the wonderful Louis Mofsie. Hey. Welcome, Louis. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to let Fran and Lance take over while I put myself on mute for a little bit.
Okay, you wanna start, Lance, introducing?
Okay. I just got off work, so bear with me. But I want to welcome my Uncle Louis Mofsie to this Zoom meeting. We've had several of these over the last 3 months while we're in pandemic, and they've been, I think, great. It certainly helped with the, getting to see each other, even though we can't see each other in person. This helps. So I'm glad we finally, get to hear from him. He's been a part of the community for a very long time, part of H as well. Served several decades as a board chair. So this is one of the ones I've been looking forward to. Didn't know I would be, working it, but we'll do our best. I wrote up some questions. So, it's Fran.
Yeah. So who do we have with us here? Do we want to do some introductions for Louis? You already met Tanis. I'm Frances Grumbly. You met Lance.
And I'm Louis Mofsie.
Louis Mofsie.
Helen.
Hello.
Hello.
And I'm Greg from Traverse City, Michigan.
Hello, Greg. Welcome.
Oh, wow.
Northwest Michigan.
Oh,
Bobby from the Bronx.
Oh, Bobby.
Hello.
Hey, Bobby.
All right.
Tony and Reggie Caesar from Queens.
I'm here too, Yaguina.
Hello.
Hey. Let's get an intro for Louis. Tell us.
We just did that, so
Want me to start?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll spotlight you, and then go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. I know all of you so well, and I said, talking about, my background and being here in New York, I said, you probably all heard the stories before, but it's great to be on here. I was thinking about this, and I said to myself, maybe some of you remember years ago on television, they had the Edward R. Murrow show.
Oh, yeah.
Where you would go into the homes of different people. And I said, it was like an Edward R. Murrow show to me.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I'll just tell you how I happened to well, first of all, I was born in Brooklyn, New York. And a lot of times I tell people that, and they said, well, number one, they kind of chuckle. And then number two, they always want to know, how did you end up being born in Brooklyn, New York? Because you're half Hopi and half Winnebago. And I said, well, my father is Hopi from Second Mesa, Arizona. And my mother is Winnebago from Winnebago, Nebraska. Now, how they ended up in New York is kind of interesting. My father was traveling with a dance company from the Hopi reservation. And they were touring all over the country. They had done many different places, all different cities. And they ended up in New York at the time or just before the World's Fair. And I think they were getting ready to do a performance at the World's Fair. My mother from Winnebago, Nebraska, was in New York City, and she was working at Montgomery Wards downtown, I think it's on 13th or 14th Street. And that's where she was working as a secretary. And I'm not sure where they met or how they met, but they did meet. And so They settled in Brooklyn, and that's how I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Wow.
Wow.
And I was born back in 1936. I'll let you figure out how many years ago that was. But anyhow, I think growing up in New York at that time, because Muriel and I always say that we are two of the first generation off the reservation. Back in 1930, around that time, there weren't too many Native Americans in New York City. There were, of course, a settlement of Mohawk iron workers on downtown Brooklyn on Pacific Street. And a few other tribes that I know of that were in the city kind of went down around that neighborhood because they knew there were other Native people, a settlement kind of down there in Pacific Street. But I remember at that time that there were my family, then there was Muriel Miguel, and that was, her father was Sam Bless, and her mother was Rappahannock. Then there were the Eagles, Swift Eagle and his family. And he was from Santo Domingo, Tewa Pueblo in New Mexico. And his wife is from the Chickahominy tribe, I believe, down in Virginia. But those were the kind of families that were here. So we became very familiar and very friendly with the Mohawk people on Pacific Street. In fact, we used to go to a church down there called the Kachina Church. And the minister, who was Dr. Corey at the time, had learned to speak the Mohawk language. He had the hymnals, which is kind of interesting in the Mohawk language, and he would give the sermons in the Mohawk language. And we became very friendly with all of them. And then as kids growing up, myself and Muriel, we got together because we learned, and I think just kind of interesting too, my father was very much into singing and dancing. And I remember as a young child that he would always be singing, he'd always be showing me how to do dances. And I remember also that way back when I was about 4, maybe 5, going on 5, we had an uncle, a Winnebago uncle of ours, come to live with us for a year or so. And I know that in the household at that time, we spoke the Winnebago language. So I kind of grew up thinking and being with Indian, I guess, songs and dances and language. And I just kind of grew up with this interest in music and in the dance. So as teenagers, myself and Miriam Miguel and some of the Mohawk people we knew down on Pacific Street, we decided that we wanted to start a little dance company and a little dance group because we wanted to do the dances from the Mohawk Iroquois people. We also wanted to do the dances from the Hopi people and from the other tribes. And so we started this little group, and the minister at the Kachina Church, Dr. Corey, said, if you want to start a group and want to meet here at the church, we're always open. You can use any of the facilities that come down, and you can meet here, and you can rehearse here, and you can have use of the facilities. And so that made it very nice for us because we got together with myself, Miriam, my sister, and some of the Mohawk people down on Pacific Street, and we started this little club. But at the time, it was very interesting around the 30s and the 40s that New York was a place where many, many Native people passed through. A lot of them were in the service. And before they would go overseas, they would always stop in New York City. Now, I have no idea, and I think this is kind of one of the things you all have heard about, the moccasin or Indian, what do they call that? Pipeline. Moccasin line, I call it. They all knew about the Mofsies. I don't know how that happened, but they would all come to the house. And we'd be open door, welcome, come in, have something to eat, sit down and join us. And then we told them how, as kids, we were interested in dance and music, and they were always so happy to share with us some of the stories from their tribe. If they could sing the songs, they would sing the songs, and they would show us some of the dances. So we had a lot of Native people around us as youngsters that shared with us some things about their tribes. And that even got us more interested in learning about different tribes and different dances and many things. So we grew up with the club, and we had a very good Sioux friend of ours. I think he was from Pine Ridge, and he gave us a name at that time. He called us Wambali Chikala. And we said, what does that mean? He said, well, in the Sioux language, what that means is little eagles. He said, you are the little eagles, and you are the group that's doing this work, and we're very, very proud of you. And I think that's one of the things I always remember, that all of these people said, we're very proud of all of you young people wanting to carry on these traditions and all of these things that from different tribes. And we were just so happy to be with them. Well, growing up in New York, I went to school. I actually grew up on West 67th Street in New York City. We moved out of Brooklyn over to West 67th Street. And it's kind of interesting because West 67th Street was what I call a melting pot, just like you always hear about New York City. There were Italian people there, there were German people there were Irish people there were African American people there were Puerto Rican people there. It was really a mix of different tribes. And of course, there were Native Americans. My aunt lived very close by, that's Red Wing. And actually she was a movie star in Hollywood during the silent era days. There was Swift Eagle and his family lived in the neighborhood. So we all were in that little neighborhood. And I think it was, you know, as a Native American person growing up in New York City, being exposed to all of these different groups of people was really very interesting, because I think it gave you, again, even more of an impetus, you know, to keep your culture alive, just like these other people. They had these big Italian feasts at the church every year. And I said, you know, Native people have feasts too. And so we grew up there, and I think, you know, it made me aware of so many other different kinds of people. But the one thing that was common to all of us who lived there on that West 67th Street is that we were all very, very poor people. We were poor people. We lived in a poor neighborhood. And I think one of the things that interested me so much is that although we all came from different backgrounds, the one thing that we shared in common was just being very poor. And I think that made me understand even more, a lot more about other people. Well, I finally went through elementary school, went through, junior high school is kind of interesting. My junior high school years, I went out to Haskell Institute in Kansas. That's where my mother went to school. I went out there and I was actually there for 2 weeks. And then I came home and they said, why didn't you want to stay there? I said, unfortunately, because I grew up on West 67th Street with all of these different groups of people, going to Haskell, which was just all Native people, was a little too difficult for me. So I came back to New York. But anyhow, I came back to New York, went to the High School of Industrial Arts because I wanted to be a commercial artist. Well, I graduated from Industrial Arts High School. I went to school in a studio one summer. And it was nothing like I thought being an artist, a commercial artist would be like. It was just like, we had a supervisor who came in every day and said, you know, do that faster, do that faster. And I would get all the work done that he asked me to do. And he said, why are you sitting there? And I said, well, I did everything you wanted me to do. Don't sit there and do like it looked like you're doing nothing. So I'd have to look busy. And I said, I think I've had enough of this. Well, at the time, I had also gone to a counselor about, you know, what my future would be. And they said that you have an aptitude for being a teacher. Now, being a teacher was the last thing in the world I ever thought I would end up doing. But I said, well, if I go to college, I can go to a college where there's art. That would interest me. Well, at the time, New York State, and anyone who lived in New York State, at that time, this is back in 1954, if you're a resident of New York State, you could attend any of the state colleges free of tuition. So I didn't have to pay any tuition to go to college. I said, well, that makes it even more enticing. So I decided then to go to college, and I went up to the Buffalo, State University of Buffalo in the art teachers program. Well, I ended up there 4 years, finally graduated, and I got a job. It's kind of interesting. It didn't take me that long to get a job. I was surprised. Out in East Meadow, Long Island. But this is kind of interesting too. The director of the art department at the East Meadow Public Schools knew a friend of ours called Lone Bear. He used to work out at Jones Beach at an Indian village. And she was very, very interested in the Indian culture. And I think from knowing him, she was more than excited to want to hire me as a Native American to be on the staff. So I got a job in the Meadowbrook Elementary School in East Meadow, Long Island. And I taught school there for 35 years.
Wow.
And then I finally retired. I took early retirement, by the way, too. I retired when I was 57. I really hadn't intended to retire, but things were changing at that time, and they were putting more work on all of the administrators, and it was a very interesting kind of time. And they said, a lot of the retirees, which I had never knew, they said, you're better off retiring now than going, a few more years. And I said, well, okay, I'm gonna retire. And then I sat around for about a month or two, kind of deciding, now what am I going to do? I'm not teaching. And I got a call from an agency in New York City called the Arts Connection. And they found out about me someplace, and they said, do you do, or would you do residencies in the public schools about Native American dance and music? And I said, sure. And so they signed me up to go out, and we went to different schools doing workshops with crafts and music and dance. And we also still had our little group, which is called the Little Eagles, but now we were back together again, and we were all adults. And so we decided to form our group again, and we were very, very fortunate to be part of another group in New York called the Folk Festival Council. And they had their headquarters at the Mcburney YMCA. And they were interested in having us join the Folk Festival Council of New York as a Native American representative. So we said, great, we'd love to be part of the group. And so we were able then to use the facilities, which is great, of the Mcburney YMCA for our meetings, for our rehearsals, and for our powwows. That's when we started the powwows in New York. And I can't remember when that was because it was so long ago. But we had the first actual powwow gatherings in New York City at the Mcburney YMCA. And we were there for many, many, many years. And I have to tell you, those powwows were attended by everybody. We had Native people attending, we had non-Native people attending, we had people who came into the city. Again, I don't know how they got on a moccasin line, but everybody knew about the Mcburney YMCA powwows. And when they come to New York City, they would all come down to the powwow. And aside from that, they would bring their regalia with them, and they would come and say, we want to dance. And I said, great, come on in. Well, we had that for many, many years. And in the meantime, adults, we changed our name from Little Eagles to the Thunderbird American Indian Dancers. And from there on, we started doing performances. We did them at Mcburney YMCA, and then we went to other institutions. We got all kinds of calls from colleges and schools, and we did performances, and we went on tour in Japan, and Lance remembers that. And we went on tour in Israel. And it's just been such a wonderful experience, I think. And we've been at it for many, many years. We're still at it. And it's just been really wonderful. And I think for me, it's great because it gave me a chance to get back into the classroom to talk with the young children. I think it's so important to reach the children when they're very, very young and start teaching them about Native American people, the truth about Native American people, and not what they see in the textbooks.
Yeah.
And I think that is so important because to change the comprehension of an individual is what really counts. And those children, they listen, and they got all of this in. And I said, now, you don't know how that's going to affect anything. I said, because these are the ones who are going to be leading this country in the future. And hopefully they, somewhere along the way, will remember that they learned about Native American people and what they are and who they are, what they're all about. If any kind of legislation comes up that concerns Indians, I think they're going to take a second look and say, wait a minute, let me think about this now, because I know what these people are. So I know that is what's happening, and I think that's great. So I give credit all the time to the Thunderbird American Indian Dance Company. They have been so loyal, so great, the giving of their time, and we're all volunteers. And I said, I think it's just beautiful that these people have stayed together so long and kept this going. And I get a lot of recognition. I get these awards, and every time I get the award, I have to say, thank you, not from me, but I thank you for giving this to the Thunderbird American Indian Dance Company. And just this past year, in 2019, I got the Bessie Award, which is really a very prestigious award for the dance work. And I got the award for my contribution to the dance world in New York City. And I said, thank you, thank you, thank you. I thank the Bessie people for finally recognizing American Indian dance. I said, because that was the first truly American dance in this country. And everyone stood up and applauded. I thought that was so great. That was a moment, and I was just so happy.
Yeah.
Well, that's a little bit of my story.
So, I remember, you know, we kind of grew up together.
Oh, yeah.
We'd go to, you know, New York, and Louis and his family would come out to Connecticut, and we'd be running around and having a good time. And we would go up to New Haven there too. But I'll never forget when I was in high school. This was before I actually joined the Thunderbird. And we had we were having a what do they call that? A show, you know. And so we all file into the, you know, auditorium, and, you know, we're all sitting down. And lo and behold, there it is, Louis and his group doing, you know, doing some of their stuff. I was so blown away. I'll never forget. I go, oh my God, that's my friend Louis. Oh my God. Everything. It was like, I came all the way to Greenwich High School to perform. So, and I remember it to this day. Seeing you up there, and oh my God, that was awesome. And then after I graduated, I joined the group, and it was a wonderful time. It really was.
So I have some questions I wrote down. I don't know, Andrew, Fran, if you have any, then we can open it up. If anyone else has questions they want to put in the chat, we'll run it by Uncle Louis.
Okay.
Do you have any questions? I'll start, Anthony Fran, but while I'm asking mine, if you could think of some, if you don't already have.
Okay.
Uncle Louis, could you describe what the New York Native community was like when H was created back in the late 60s?
Say that again.
Can you describe what the New York Native community was like when H was first created?
New York City at that time, there were a lot of Native people in the city, and of course, many of them came to the Mcburney YMCA. But I think, you know, we had all decided that more than just the powwows, we wanted to have more of a permanent gathering place. And at the time, it was very interesting because at the time, the government was funding a lot of different groups. And of course, the Native American people came in on that, and they were forming all kinds of community houses and places for people to meet. And so a very good friend of ours, Mofongo Hines, who was Pawnee from Oklahoma, became very interested in, you know, what people were saying about trying to get a permanent place for Native people to meet. And so she called me and she said, would you like to get together with some of the other people here in New York City? And let's talk about the possibilities of forming a community center in New York. So we got together. There were about, I guess, 5 or 6 of us. There was Mary Helen Smith at the time. I think Orrin Lyons came in there, and there was some other Native people in the city. So we got together on many, many evenings. I have to tell you, you know, this was not something that was easy to do. We spent months and months, maybe meeting 2 or 3 times a week. And we met up on, I think it was 35th Street in the church there. And we sat and talked, and we would be there till all hours in the morning trying to get this all together. And then finally, Mofongo put this all together in a report and a proposal and sent it, you know, to the proper people. And that's how we got funded. And I'm not sure how much, you know, money there was at that time, but I'm sure it was a couple of $1 million that we got to open. So we started up on, I think it was 41st Street or 40th, maybe it was, oh no, I think it was 37th Street. That's where the first community house was. And that's where we started. And then of course they moved around a bit, but that was the first community house, 37th Street. And I was so happy. We were all so happy that we finally got the community house and we could bring in many Native people to work in New York City at the community house. We had an art gallery at the community house. We had daycare at the community house. We had classes that I also participated in, and crafts and music and dance. And we had all kinds of health department, helping get people work, helping to get people apartments. I think we even had a building at that time in Brooklyn, New York, where Native people could rent, you know, apartments. So, and we also had an alcoholics program. So it was really amazing that, you know, all of that got together. But it was a task at that time to get it started. Yeah, and I'm so happy that at that time we had the people who were there to give their time and effort to creating that house.
Thank you. Hey, Fran, do you have a question, or should I go to one of mine?
Well, no, go ahead. If you have another question.
I have 4, but once I run out of 4, I need you to.
Okay, that's okay, because then one of your questions may be one of mine.
Sure. Okay. So the arts were always very important to my mother and close to her art. Can you talk about H's role with supporting Native artists and performing arts through the years?
Oh, Rosemary's role. I have to tell you, and it's really wonderful. I think it's wonderful that the old community, because Fran and Rosemary and her brothers, we all grew up together. We used to go up to Greenwich, Connecticut to the farm when she lived with her grandma, and we loved going up there and spending time together and being together. So I feel, like they're my family, Rosemary and Fran and everyone. And Rosemary was fantastic. I mean, she was totally, I have to say this without question, she was totally devoted to the community house and to the Native people in New York City. And she worked very, very hard. I sometimes wonder if people really understand how much time and effort and work that Rosemary put into keeping that community house what it was. But her interest in the arts, and I think that's also because growing up together was not just me and Fran and Rosemary, but also Muriel Miguel. Now, I think as kids, Muriel Miguel and Fran and Rosemary as kids, I don't think we would have thought that we would end up being in the theater, being in the dance world. I mean, it's just like, I don't think we ever planned on doing that. But I think during the years that we were doing it, there was such an interest, not today as so much, but back then there was such an interest in Native American culture, particularly in Native American theater, American Indian dance. So we developed Spider Woman, of course, which is incredible. Thunderbird American Indian Dancers, we've done that. And Rosemary was always part of that. In fact, Rosemary danced with us when she was younger in the Thunderbirds, so did Fran and Lance.
Yeah.
So she was always very, very, involved in the arts.
Yeah.
And she created the first Native-owned, Native-run art gallery in New York City. It was Native artists who put their work there, and it was run by Native people. We had a little craft shop there too. She also sponsored, Muriel and her worked together on creating what they call, I think it was called, at that time, I forgot what it was. I'm not sure it was a Badger, the Badger's Corner.
Oh, right.
Yep.
Is that right, Badger's Corner? I
The
think it was.
Badger's
Yeah.
Corner.
It
Yeah.
was a little set aside part for theater, and we did all kinds of plays. I did a few plays there myself, and they had other people come in and do plays, and they had Native playwrights coming in doing their work there, and Spider Woman, and it was really, really
And
wonderful.
the Colorado Sisters.
Colorado Sisters, yes, and. At that time also, I did one evening with Joanne Shenandoah down at the community house. And it was this going on all the time. I mean, there were things happening there all the time. And she did the art gallery, and I said that was wonderful because New York City had never had an art gallery like that.
Yeah.
She was there with the art gallery, with the theater, with dance. And she would always welcome anyone who wanted a place to come to perform whatever. She was there, whether it was a musician, poets, whatever it was. She would always have a place at the community house for these people to come. And I think that was so wonderful. But she devoted a great deal of her time to the arts.
Yeah. We had John Trudell come.
Oh, yeah.
We have so many people I remember who would come. I mean, wonderful people. And some people who were not known.
Yeah.
Who now have become very well known. Yeah. it was a wonderful time.
Yeah, I
Really.
remember working with Joanne Shenandoah when we got together, and she decided she would do a concert there. She said, "Do you think anyone will come?" Who would have thought?
Right. Oh my gosh. I know.
Yeah, it was great.
And Lance even did a couple of videos.
Oh, really? Oh, yes.
Remember? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Uncle Louie, it's on Facebook. If you look at
You
my
put them
page,
on Facebook.
you
Yeah.
played the MC. You were great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
I let you make a joke in there about being from Beverly Hills. I thought that was very funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, video too. I mean, that was a time back when, you know, video was just getting started. I said, that was there. That was there.
Yeah. There was stuff going on all the time. You could go there middle of the day and in the evening, and there was always something going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It was a great time.
Yeah, we did something there also one time. Muriel and I were moderators for a group of Mohawk people, and it was called, I think it was called Iron and Corn Soup or something like that. But we had a whole evening talking about the whole iron workers, and it was so wonderful because the wives came, and then when they were talking to you, you could get a real insight into what these people did, you know, what these Mohawk ironworkers did in their lives. And I said, very few people, you know, understand, you know, what was going on. I was just talking with, just to kind of interject this, with Arn Lines last week, or week before last. And he was talking to me about, he said, you know, a lot of people know all about the ironworkers in New York City, but they don't know about these other tribes and these other people who were here all the time. And he said, one of the things I think they also forget, that Native people were here when the Dutch landed in Manhattan Island, and they're still here. He said, we've been here all the time, but nobody knows that. They think all the Indians moved out west of the Mississippi River.
Yeah, they think those are the only Indians.
Right.
Those guys.
I said, that's so true. We had been here from the beginning and we're still here. And he said, I want to write about this. He said, I want to write about this. And I said, please do, Oren, because, you know, it's something people don't know and it should be told. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We've had some more people join. Nadima Agard has joined. I'll just also remind any questions the participants have, please just put them in chat and we can, you know, share those with Uncle Louie. Mm-hmm. I'll go to another third of my fourth question, so I'm running out. What do you remember most about your decades as the H board chair? What were some of the biggest changes?
Oh, that's a good question, Lance. Let me say one thing about being on the board. There were a lot of things going on, good and not so good. And I think the board was great. I mean, I have to say that they really were great because there were many, many things that we had to discuss that were confidential, that could not get out of that boardroom. And I have to congratulate all the people who were on the board because I had never heard anyone speak about any of the confidential things that we had to speak about. And I have to tell you, that is not easy for the Indian grapevine. But they did it. But so many good things too, and I have to give the board credit for that. We talked about and worked about so many things that we felt were going to be good for the community, that were going to be good for the community house. We did our best, and I say that from the bottom of my heart, to keep that community house going as strong as it could go for as many years as it could go. Unfortunately, like with everything else, the funding for any of these kind of places now is running out. It's very, very hard for these kind of places, and I know a lot of them. I know a lot of the Indian centers in so many cities have disappeared. It's just very hard
Yep.
to get the funding to keep them going. And I hope that the people here in New York City, the Indian community, will truly lend their support to the community house because they really, really need it. They can't survive without your participation and your, your giving. And that's so important. It doesn't run by itself. We're not just handing money to do this. We have to be there to help raise the money and support the house. But the board did a very good job. I congratulate all of them. And I'm so happy that, was it last year or the year before last, that Harris, what was his first name?
Curtis.
Jimmy?
Curtis Harris.
Yes, came back and temporarily served as the executive director. I think that was great. And he was a board member for many, many years. Curtis.
Yeah.
Many years. And I'm so happy that he came back. But that's the kind of thing we need. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, one thing, if I may interject a little something, is that a lot of things people would start in jobs at the community house, and I like to think, got experience and training, then, left as they should into bigger and better things. But then it was always nice to see people to come back and sort of help.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the community house supported a lot of Native people's education, and many of them, yes, gave back, and many of them had the attitude that, well, the community house supported me while I was going through school, so I can work here for a while and give back to the community, and that's true community spirit, and we love that. I also would like to say that we have another Mohawk as an ED right now, Melissa Oakes, who is doing a phenomenal job with her limited staff that she has and limited, the limited funds to be able to keep us connected this way with Zoom. I mean, I didn't even know what Zoom was. I go, Zoom? What's Zoom? And here we are. It gives us an opportunity in these difficult times to keep our programs going and also to connect with each other and see each other. It's one thing to talk on the phone with each other as we do from time to time, but be able to see each other like this, Yeah, and I can't wait until we can gather again together. Louis, you came to Governor's Island, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
That was a wonderful experience.
Oh, yes, indeed.
That was so nice. And they had actually given us that house again for this year, but of course we got into the situation that we're into, which, that took care of that. But we were truly looking forward to having a wonderful, wonderful year. I mean, for the short time that we were there and the short notice that we got that we were going to get that house, I mean, everybody worked wonderfully. It started with Curtis and then transferred to Melissa, and everybody just pulled together, and there were so many wonderful programs. And you talk about the gallery, we have that wonderful art, all that art that we have that we took there and displayed, and which we still have. And one, Melissa has plans for us to, have another gallery eventually. So, while we've lost all our federal funding, little by little, we're pulling ourselves up by our bootstrings.
Good.
And we're hoping that, we're going to bring the community with us. Lance and I happen to be on the board. That's why we can talk about these. But yeah. And so, I'm enthused. I'm enthused that here we are, we're still going, and we're gonna fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always say that, you know, when I'm talking to people, I said, we've been here for a long time and we're going to be here for a long time.
That is right. We are. We are. We love our community. We truly do. And,
Right.
and that's Rosemary's legacy too, you know.
Yes, yes.
Love the
yes.
community. So,
And like you said, it takes a lot of work. It doesn't just happen. I
Oh,
know,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
you know, growing up, to me, it just seemed like it just was every easy because things already
Right.
happened.
yeah. Oh, yay. Powwow. Oh, yay. You know, Halloween party, children's Christmas party. It's
Right,
a
right.
lot of work.
Well, that's great because we did it for you kids.
That's right. And we grew up and now we're doing it for the next generation.
So I'm on our Facebook because a lot of people are watching there. Margaret Tarrant, it says hello to you, Uncle Louie. And
Oh, hi.
also, we have a question from Color Me Wampum, who's asked about who designed the interior of H to be a circle with the performance center in the middle and the offices on the other side. And I think that's talking about 404 Lafayette, second floor.
Yeah, yeah. That was Rosemary once again. I have to tell you, before we moved into that site on Lafayette Street, it used to be a mill where they made some kind of material. I'm not sure what kind of material it was, but they had all of these weaving machines that filled up all of that space. And when we saw the space, you know, we went in, the board people went in to see if this would be suitable for the community house. And I have to tell you, the few of us who were there from the board, walking around in the space, we had to say to ourselves, you know, how in the world are you going to get all of these machines out of here? And how in the world is this going to, you know, be used as a community house? Well, it's amazing. I have to tell you, it's amazing. We sat down with Rosemary, and she had in her mind exactly how she would use that space. And I have to say, I have no idea how she did this, but she had the floor plans. They were architectural floor plans, but she designed them. And the architects came in and they put it all together. And the circle, which I think was, you know, unbelievable. The circle, she said, that's how we want the layout to be, so that there'll be that circle there where we have all different kinds of activities. And we had powwows there too. And any offices around the edge of that. And I was like, when I walked in there after they had completed all of the work, I think the board members were just flabbergasted. They said, oh my God, I would never have envisioned what Rosemary did with that place. And I don't know how she did it. I really don't.
Yeah.
But, you know, she had a mind that was something else.
It was a beautiful space. Absolutely beautiful space.
Hopefully we'll get back to a space like that again.
Oh yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be nice.
Nadima Agard asks a question. She wants you to talk about the time that the both of you went to Interlochen in Michigan. And you were in a tiny plane.
Oh my God.
Well, this sounds like it's going to be a good story.
Oh, Nadima, my God. Yeah, that was a trip and a half, I'll tell you. I don't remember all the details. Miriam and I, every once in a while, we talk about it, but you know, I remember we got, I don't know where it was, that we landed first. We took a plane and got, I'm not sure what city it was. But from that point on, we had to take another plane to get to Interlochen. Well, we got in there,
Right.
I think it was about 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm not even sure how late it was, but I know it was late. And then they put us on this little I don't know what you would call it, but a little plane that had like 4 or 5 seats in it, and a propeller. Thank God it had wings. And we took off in the middle of the night, and the weather was not great. I'll tell you, that was one of the most incredible rides. I have to tell you another one. Well, later on I'll explain, but that ride, up and down, over, sideways, whatever. There was a storm going on, I think, at the time too. We could hear the thunder, see the lightning, and we were going along. And I never forget this. I said, oh, well, what are you going to do? I mean, we can't get out of the plane. We're on our way. So I took out the Village Voice, and I was reading the Village Voice while all this plane was going up and down all over. And Nadima and Muriel said, how can you sit there and read that newspaper when we're going, on this? Well, we got there. It must have been about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then we got to our rooms. I got us some hotel, but then we had to get up again very early to do these workshops. And then after the workshops, we had a break. And then we did what we did. I did a one-man show, which was unbelievable. I mean, and Muriel did a thing she had written, I think, a play or whatever. And Nadima was talking about art, but it was an incredible trip. And I said, I have to give credit to Nadima and Muriel and myself for being so dedicated to whatever we were doing. I said, to go through that, because that was an unbelievable experience. But I'll never forget it, just like Nadima, never forget it.
Never, never.
Nadima, your mic's unmuted, so if you want to add to that, feel free.
Oh, yeah, that was the part that I'll never forget, you reading the Village Voice. Muriel and I were in the back of the plane, and you were sitting in the front with the pilot, and you were on the left side because the pilot was on the right side, and I was behind the pilot, and Muriel was behind you, and we were looking at you. You were just reading the Village Voice, and I think it was that we missed the flight.
Whatever.
we missed the connecting flight, and that's why we had to wind up doing this Cessna thing. But do you remember who arranged that for us?
Oh gee, no I don't.
I don't remember. I know that I talked about my artwork. I brought some images and I had them matted, and I put them out. But yeah, that was the most incredible thing. I will always remember that. I mean, who could forget something like that? That was the most scary thing. That was the scariest ride I've ever had on a plane. And that plane was like the size of a Volkswagen Rabbit.
Right.
It was right, Louis? It was tiny.
It was unforgettable. But I also have to say, I had no idea whatsoever what a prestigious place that was in Tulak. And I said, I didn't know what this was, but this is supposed to be a really high, way high up there, kind of place, the school. And I said, whoa, and here we are.
Very famous place, very prestigious art school.
Yes.
But whether they call the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Yeah, I had no idea where it was.
I went back there many years later. I went back there in the 90s.
Ah.
But it was really that moment. And the other thing I remember is when we used to go to that building in the Bowery, and they had all these parties in that 2 buildings, and you had to go in one door to go on the roof and then come across the roof and come back downstairs. Remember that?
I vaguely remember something like that, yes.
And I remember one time I came in and I remember that you were arguing with Russell Means about something.
As one does.
The Amesters were on the roof. They had a drum group on the roof. And we had various parties
Yeah.
on each floor.
Wow.
So you were there. I remember you like pointing your finger at Russell and saying, I don't, you were scolding him about something. That was the other memory that was burnt into my psyche.
Oh, yeah. I have to say that I think growing up in New York City, or being here in New York City, whether you were born here or not, and coming in contact with all these different people, it's like things that stand out in your mind, like places you used to go to meet, places that they would have gatherings. And you think about it, and he's like, what in the world were we doing there? But it's all part of the whole thing. And I said, I guess, my mother, she loved New York City. She loved New York City. And I think that, came down to me in one way too. I said, I enjoy the city. But I said, it's so full of so many different things and so many different places. I said, it's just amazing. And I said, you don't think about it all the time, but I said, you experience that living here. And I think, that's stuff you don't think about much. But I remember one of my friends told me one time, you live in one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world. And I said, I never thought about that, but that's very, very true. Oh, the other one experience I want to tell you about an airplane. I went down to the San Blas Islands off the coast of Panama to see the San Blas people on the islands. You go from Panama City, and again, you take one of these little planes that looks like a Volkswagen out to the islands. Now, when I was there, fortunately, you could not stay on the islands. You could visit, but you could not stay there. When the sun was about to go down, all non-native people had to leave and go back to the shore or to Panama. And so we were there, had a beautiful visit. It was amazing to be there, to see the islands. The islands are gorgeous. We had a dinner there. They just went outside the door and took whatever they could out of the water, and that was dinner, and it was fabulous. Well, we're at this island waiting for the little plane that took us there to come back and pick us up. And it started getting later and later. And I said, well, we have to get off of this island because, these people, well, the plane finally came, but the plane came, it was just beginning sundown, and a storm came in. And you could see the lightning, you could see the clouds, you could see the rain. And I said, now we have no choice, but we had to get on that little plane and get off that island back to Panama City. Well, we took off. And I think this time, Nadima, I was really scared. I didn't have any Village Voice to look at. The plane went up and down, and I honestly believe, I said, we're never going to make it. We're never going to make it. But that reminded me of Interlochen.
I want to share that one of our participants, Greg Stone, mentioned he lives close to that, and that students from all over the world go to that school for the arts.
Yeah.
All right, I'll
Great.
see y'all later.
Also, some more comments on Facebook.
It's only 6 o'clock. 6:30. 6:30. Yeah.
A lot of people are loving the wall behind you with all the Kachina dolls.
Oh, let me just put this up a little bit.
Oh,
As you can see, I collect Kachina dolls. And those of you who know the Hopi culture, of course, know about Kachinas. They're masked dancers that come to the villages every year. And they're still doing this exactly the way they did 300, 400 years ago. These Kachinas come to the villages. And the Kachinas are believed to be supernatural beings. Um, the story goes, one of the creation stories is that the Kachinas came from the sky, and they came down to the Hopi people, and they taught the Hopi people how to plant corn, how to raise crops, how to survive, and then they went back to their home. Now, each year, I think the cycle of Kachina dances starts around February. They come back to the villages. In fact, we were out there this year at what they call the bean dance. And during the bean dance, all of the Kachinas come out of the kivas. Now, the kivas are the underground meeting places where all of the religious activities take place. Well, the Kachinas come out of the kivas, and they come to tell the people that they are back, and they're going to be doing the dances for the coming season. And I think the Kachina dances go on from February until the end of July. And then they go home again until the next February. But the Kachina dolls are carved by the Hopi men, and they're given to the children so that they can understand and identify what the different Kachinas are. And that's what I have here is a collection of some of the different types of Kachinas. There's a, we call a mudhead, who's a clown. There's an eagle dancer. There's a corn dancer. There's a Kachina crow mother. They're all different kinds. I think there are probably over 300 different kinds of Kachinas. But when I was out there many years ago, my uncle, who we used to go out and visit all the time up in Second Mesa, he gave me one or two of the Kachinas. And my father also used to carve Kachinas. I don't unfortunately have any of the Kachinas my father made, but I have two or three of them that my uncle made. And so when I got those, I said, I think I'm going to start getting all the different kinds of different types of Kachinas that I can. So that's what I have hanging on my wall. I'm very happy, you know, and I also have to tell you, you know, it's strange. I think if you ever have a chance to go out to Hopi and see one of the dances, the Kachina dances, it will change. It's something I can't explain, and very few people I think who've gone to see them can. There is something that is supernatural about these dances, because when they're dancing, you can feel it. They're not people. They become whatever that particular Kachina is. And all of this is done, of course, for the good and welfare of the people. And you feel it. And so it's like, it's a very moving experience. And I feel very comfortable having the dolls here because, you know, it makes me feel like I'm attached. And I think that's one of the things that I enjoy about having them here.
Somebody said that you should talk or sing to your Kachinas. Something like that. There's something, if you have Kachinas, that there are certain things that you should do around them. I don't know whether they said it was talk or sing or what. Does anybody remember? Somebody shared that
Melissa
early
said
on.
that you were supposed to feed them and treat them well.
I haven't heard of that. I know the dolls are actually dolls. They're
Right.
given to the children. They're not any kind of religious or sacred attachment to them. They're dolls that are given to the children so they can begin to identify, you know, which one is which. That's what they do. Now, I have to tell you personally, I haven't heard anything like that. I'm just saying I haven't heard it. I don't know, you know, maybe, but I don't know.
I hadn't until that, because, well, I have to tell you a funny story about Kachina. when I was out there in Arizona or New Mexico or wherever it was, I bought some Kachina Christmas ornaments. And we had a dog, a big yellow lab, who would always get in the garbage. I mean, he was in there. He ate one of the Kachinas off the Christmas tree.
Oh, no.
And they're made with such hard wood, apparently, that he actually had to go have, even though he chewed it, you know, we actually had to take him, and he had to have an operation.
Oh my God,
His
really?
belly blew up like you wouldn't believe.
Oh my God.
I mean, because he ate that Kachina off the Christmas tree. It was funny.
That's a
Lance,
great
you
story.
remember him? Philo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Big, beautiful, happy, goofy lab,
Right,
you
yeah.
know?
Nadima has a question, a comment.
I have a comment and a question. I went to Second Mesa in 1975. I was visiting Carla Miller, and we went up to visit a friend of Carla's. His name was Michael Caboti.
Oh, Michael, yes.
Fred Caboti was there, you know, of course, very famous Hopi artist. And Carla and I had no idea we were in the home of like one of these famous Hopi, one of the famous Hopi artists. And I remember we bought all this stuff from a deli, an Italian deli in Phoenix. We bought salami and provolone. And we were like having this, you know, cheese and wine and stuff like that. And then we went to a kiva ceremony that night. And I have to tell you, I never was the same after that. I mean, when you were talking about it affects you in a way, like what I say is that I lost my spiritual virginity, you know, because I mean, what I didn't know about spiritual, I didn't know until I went to Hopi. And then the spirituality was so real that it was like I could never come back to New York and be excited about a Broadway musical or anything, because I experienced such powerful spiritual stuff. And
yeah.
did you know the Caboti family?
I'm very happy. I had a chance when I was out there many years ago to meet and talk with Fred Caboti, and we had a great time together. I mean, we you know, we're talking about New York, and you know, all the things that he's done. And you know, when you talk about him as an artist, if you ever go to the Grand Canyon, to the tower, he designed the tower. He did all of the interior paintings, and that place also, even though it's, you know, a tourist attraction, when you go in there, you definitely have a different feeling. You definitely can feel it. And I think that's part of, you know, Fred's legacy, which I think is so great. His paintings and what he designed and the buildings and so on, they all have so much of him in it that you can feel it. And of course, his son now, Michael, is doing very good with keeping Hopi artists involved in so many things. They have I think they have I don't know if it's school there on Second Mesa, but he's right there, and it's wonderful that he's taken up where his father left off. But yes, I knew Fred very well.
Do you know his niece, Patty Talahongva?
I don't think
She's
so.
a journalist. She's Michael's niece, and she came to New York, and she was teasing her aunt. She says, "Oh, you speak Hopi with a New Jersey accent." Yeah, she's a journalist with the Indian News. I forget which Indian News service it is, but Patty Talahongva, she's Michael Cabote's niece.
Oh, great. That's good news. Good news.
Uncle Louis, Hines Tarrant is watching. She wanted to say hello.
Hi.
With her son Cody, and she has a question. she wants you to tell a story about Grandma Mofsie, your mother, because she has some memories when she was very young.
Ah, yeah, Mom. Well, one of the things I have to say about my mother, ever since I was a kid, I always had this impression. I said, my mother knows everybody in the world. I remember at times she had an address book that was, I don't know, 12 inches thick with names and addresses of people that she had met. And she would always communicate with them, which I thought was great. She'd send Christmas cards. She had a list of Christmas cards that went out all over the place. And one of the things I think was so great about her, she loved to meet people and she loved to talk. And wherever we would go, no matter what it was, I remember we were out in Santa Fe one summer, and we had some car trouble. So we had to pull over to the side of the road, and we had to wait for, I guess it was AAA, whatever. But in the meantime, the woman, which is so nice, from inside of the house, said, you know, come on into the courtyard and, you know, get out of the sunshine, she said, and sit where it's cool. And so we said, oh, thank you so much, while we're waiting for the AAA to come. Well, my mother started talking with this lady, and I swear, in a span of half an hour, they were sitting down like they had been friends for years and years, just being, you know, so open and friendly with each other. And they took their, you know, she took down her name and her address, and they exchanged, you know, addresses and everything. And every year my mother would send her a Christmas card. But that's how she was. No matter where she went, she would always find somebody, and she just loved it. And I also have to say, she was very open to all tribes. I remember when we lived on 67th Street, people would come, and we had some Sioux friends that would come by maybe once a month. I remember this so vividly. And when they came to the house, my mother would find out what day they're coming, and she would make tripe stew. This was something that they loved. They loved tripe stew. And when I got a little older and found out what tripe stew is, I said, ah. But anyhow, now I love it too, by the way. But she'd make this pot of tripe stew. She would make fry bread for them, and they would come over. And when they finished their meal, they would all go into the living room, and they would take out their hand drums, and they would sing songs to each other. And I said, you know, that stuck with me, remains with me so much. I said, because, you know, this is how it used to be many, 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 many years ago. I said, before they had televisions and iPhones and everything else, what the people would do, what the men would do, they would get together and they would sing songs to each other. And I said, now you talk about today, who hears about something like that? Sitting down with someone and singing songs to each other. And I remember one time many of the songs they made up themselves, of course. A friend of ours called Sitting Bull, not Sitting Bull, but Crazy Bull. I don't know if you remember him, but he was a great grandson of Sitting Bull. That's what he tells us. I tend to believe him because in one of the books that I had, I can't remember where it was, there was a picture of a group of delegates that went to Washington many years ago. And of course, among them was Sitting Bull, but he had an entourage of other people with him. And right there, he was a little kid then, was Crazy Bull. And I said, right, that's his great-great-grandson. Anyhow, he was sitting there composing a song in the Sioux language. And when he finished, he said, I just want you to know that we composed a song about you and your mother and your family. And he said, in this song, we are just saying thank you so much for welcoming us to be here. Thank you so much for letting us into your home. Thank you so much for sharing with us so much. We just want you to know that we feel very, very honored to be here. And I was so touched by that. I said, I have the song on one of those old, old record. someplace. I don't know where
Oh.
it is, but I have it somewhere. Yeah. But I thought it was wonderful. Yeah, but she was like, and no matter where it was, I mean, anyone that come around, she just sit and talk with them and any tribe. I mean, she knew people from all over Canada, Alaska, Mexico. She knew everybody. Yeah, she was a very, very, fantastic person in her own way. Yeah.
Sheldon Raymore, the deputy director here at H, wants to ask you about Buffy St. Marie, and in particular one of her songs, or a lyric in one of her songs that says, "Are you a stupid Indian down at the Y on Saturday night?"
I don't know if I ever heard that song. There's been so much that's gone on. In fact, I have worked with Buffy St. Marie a few times. We did some recordings together here in New York. I worked, this is kind of interesting. First time I met Buffy was down at Gimbel's, the old department store on 34th Street. She was performing there and we were doing something there, and that's where I first met her. And I admire her very, very much for all of the songs and the music, and what she has done has been incredible. I think, for Buffy and many other Native American people, there was things going on years ago that a lot of Native people from the reservation had questions about New York City Indians. And I remember them saying, "Are you an apple, red on the outside, but white on the inside?" And I said, I don't blame them for saying that, because I said, I don't think it's, and I have to say this, and I'm very honest when I say this. For me, as a New York City Native person, to understand totally what it is to be raised and born on a reservation, I have no idea. I would never claim to have an idea, because I was never there to grow up there. And I say, for a Native person who didn't grow up in New York City, to understand what Native, urban Indian people are like being born here, it's not the same. We're not the same kind of people. I would agree with that. But the one thing that I think is so important to never forget is that we here in New York City are as much Native as anyone that comes from a reservation. And I'm very strong on that, because I honestly believe that in many cases, we have gotten the short end of the deal. Oh, you're not from a reservation, you're not a real Indian. I'll tell you, there are people that I know from reservations that I'll go to and talk to about singing and dancing. Oh, I never sing, I never dance. And I said, it's very difficult, to understand. And I think that has to be something that we as Native people are gonna have to accept, because the statistics are showing that today, more than 65% of Native people are now urban Indians. And I said, we have to accept that, because that's what's happening. And I think those people who live in cities like New York, wherever it is, that are retaining and holding on to their Native heritage and their Native ways and their Native, whatever they really understand about Native people, that is vitally important. And I'm saying that only from the point of view that I have traveled to the Crow Reservation, I've traveled to the Sioux Reservation, I've traveled up to the Inuit people up in Alaska, I've traveled in Canada to the different reservations, up to the Six Nations Reserve, the Iroquois people up on Onondaga, over over near Lake Erie, Allegheny, all those reservations. I sat down with those people, I sung songs with them, and I said, I've been around, I know these people. But I would, again, as I said, I would never claim, to be from a reservation or know what the reservation people know. I don't. But I've been there, and I sat down and danced. We danced in a longhouse I mean, we've been around these people, and I say that because it's important for what we're doing. If we're going to preserve these things, these dances and songs, you have to go to the source. You have to go to the source and learn from the people there. You don't make it up here in New York. You have to go there and learn it. And that's what we have done. That's what we have done. This isn't something we made up in New York City. This is something we have learned. And that all goes back to when I was a very young child and my father sang to me the Hopi songs and showed me the Hopi dances. That's where I started to learn. And that wasn't out in Second Mesa. It was in Brooklyn, New York. Excuse me for going off like that.
Yay.
Well said. So we're going to try to end by 6:30. So we have about 10 more minutes. But I just want to mention some people on Facebook are saying hello, not so much questions. Ray and Brenda Silva from North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Kate Cantanella says hello. Says she bought some earrings from you a long time ago.
Oh, wow.
She has a follow-up question about the Kachina Dolls. She asks, is giving the Kachina Dolls to children, is that a means of a rites of passage?
No.
It's
No.
just for education?
It's a gift. And usually what happens is that in many of the dances, the Kachinas actually will give the gifts to the children. They'll actually, in many of the dances they have parts where they're giving away things. And they will go over and give the young children, the Kachina dancer will give the young child the Kachina doll. They also have what they call mudheads. The mudheads are the clowns.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The mudheads wear they actually have a kind of a brown mud mask. But anyhow, they're the clowns. And they give gifts away too. So during the dances, what they will do is they will go around. They have like oranges, they have peaches, they have candy, they have cake, whatever, and they'll just throw it up to anyone who's there watching in the mesa. They'll throw it up on top of the roofs, they'll throw it wherever you are, and they'll be giving you gifts. And that's part of what that's all about. But no, there's no kind of anything. I have to say this, from what I understand, there is nothing religious connected to the Kachina dolls. They are for the children to learn, to identify the different kinds of Kachinas. That's what I understand. So I want to make, from what I know, understood. Yeah.
Well, they are beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Some of them. Now, today, the ones I have here are probably more of the old style. Today, when you go out to the Gallup ceremonials or some of the other art shows out in the West, they're carving Kachinas that are sculptures, not dolls. Some of them are 5 or 6 feet tall, and they're carved like sculptures. They're not dolls. I mean, they've gone way beyond that now. And they have competitions, for best Kachinas. But they're not. I wouldn't call them dolls. I mean, they're sculptures. And I'll just say one more thing. These new Kachina sculptures, you could pay anywhere from $10,000 or $15,000 for it. So it's not a doll.
Nope. Awesome.
Does anyone else have any other questions, either watching us on Facebook or here on the Zoom?
I have a question. Do you have this book, Louis, Hopi Kachinas?
What's that?
Do you have this book? It's called Hopi Kachinas. It's
Oh, yeah.
hardcover.
I have several books on Hopi Kachina dolls.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I thought I remember seeing a mudhead clown in here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a little one right behind my head.
A little mudhead?
There he is.
Just cute.
And he has a little mudhead baby on the back.
Oh, wow.
There's a baby.
That's adorable.
And Mudhead. Yeah, they're the clowns. They're the clowns.
Beautiful.
I have to tell you about the clowns. They get away with things you would not believe. And when I say that, I mean really, they go as far as they can, but it's all in fun. It's all in fun. And I mean, when you see it, you might be shocked, but you know, it's not really shocked. It's what they do really is to kind of make fun of what we might consider to be very personal. We might consider to be very private, but to them it's like, you know, everybody knows about this. This is not any secret to anybody. We're just showing you outright what it is. and it's fun. And then it becomes funny.
By the way, Louis, I like your shirt.
Oh, thank you. I don't know where I got this, but I love this shirt myself.
That's really nice.
Oh, I thought I would share one memory I had of your mother was when she lived around the corner from me and my mother in Brooklyn.
Uh-huh.
And when Kevin would go visit her, I would go stay there. We were staying there the night of the either 1975 or 76 blackout.
Oh, yeah, my God.
So, of course, it was wonderful for me and Kevin. We're looking out on the fire escape, and people are, you know, running down the street with couches and
Oh, wow. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that. I'll have to tell you this too, Lance. The night those lights went out, myself and my good friend Rob, the guitar player, we were at the community house.
Oh.
And we were in our little office here that we had on Lafayette Street. I forgot what we were doing, but we were right in the middle of cataloging something, and the lights went out. And I said, uh-oh, the community didn't pay electric bill. And we went outside, and we realized then that all the lights in New York City had gone out. And I'm saying, is this possible? And then I had to drive back to New Jersey. And I have to tell you, I was truly amazed how the city, it's really a wonderful thing when you think about it, how everyone in the city cooperated during that blackout. I mean, we could drive up 6th Avenue and people were out there because there are no traffic lights. People were out there stopping traffic and then letting traffic go and guiding traffic through everything. And the restaurants, they had put everything outside so people could, you know, still get something to drink or whatever. And I said, it's really amazing to see how the people of New York City, you know, got together and cooperated during that time. It was really wonderful.
Mm.
Oh, there's one more question, and we're a little bit over. Walter Anderson brought up, I guess, a story. He says hello.
Hi.
And he says when he was here in the past, you had a story about the Stonewall. I don't know if it was the riot or just that area. Some story you shared with him about the Stonewall, you know, the bar in the village.
Downtown?
Yeah.
I don't remember sharing any stories about that.
All right. I just wanted to make sure to get all those questions in.
Yeah.
For those listening, I only see the most recent 5 or 6 in my view. So that's why, you know, I write them down before they disappear. But that's why you may only be seeing it. So Sheldon says thank you for taking the time out tonight. And I will concur with that. Is there any last statements before we say goodnight?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Louis.
Yawagoa, Louis.
And thank all of you. This has really been wonderful. And I had a good time sharing some of my memories. I mean, there are so many things, you know, that happened. And I said, and I'm so glad Nadima came in about interlocking, the kind of things you've done, but you don't really think about them all the time. But it's just nice, you know, that people remember those things and, you know, the experiences. It's great.
Well, when I had my night to speak, Louis, I talked about the time that we were homeless. My family was homeless when you were on 67th Street, and we all came to live with
Right.
you. Oh my God.
Yeah,
That was,
I think people have to understand too. We only had 3 rooms.
I know. And the bathtub was part of the kitchen sink.
Right.
Oh, brother. We were there for a few weeks until our house was ready. But
Yeah.
I remember we had a really good time because
Oh yeah. Oh
we
God,
went
I
to
love.
the
We
museum,
played
the
and played.
we went all over. It was great. That was, and plus we were making all the drums and all the things
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the daisy chains for the powwows,
Oh,
you know,
that was
for
great.
for the
Oh yeah.
summer thing. It was, I remember that. It was a wonderful time.
Oh yeah.
Your mother, you know, there again, so generous. But then my grandmother was like that too.
Oh
you know.
yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes. She
Come on
was
in.
wonderful.
Always feeding. It was great. I don't know how we survived, all of us in that little place.
I don't either. But we did.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, I have one more question.
I remember Mrs. Mofsie when remember when the community house was on 13th Street on that corner?
Yes.
And we were on the top and the elevator broke down and man, we was huffing and puffing up the stairs to get to the community house and your mother just went past us. She just kept on going like a little Energizer rabbit, man. She wasn't tired at all.
Oh yeah, she was good. Sprightly old lady.
I think that was we were on the 8th floor then, so that was pretty
Yeah.
Okay, thank you again, Uncle Louis. I'm glad to, get this opportunity. And, you have a lot of great historical knowledge, and it's a pleasure that you get to share it with us.
And thank you. And I hope to come back and talk with some other people again.
Yeah, no, of course. Of course.
Well, we do it every Wednesday, so you're welcome to come in and,
Okay. I think I know now how to get into the Zoom.
Well, let me tell you something, Louis. We play bingo on Friday nights, which is a lot of fun, but I'm always losing my card.
Yeah. So if I can't get into Zoom again, I'll call Lance.
Yeah, we can help you. Melissa and Tanis helped Gloria get online and Zoom. So.
Oh yeah.
They
I'm
have
sorry
the
I missed that
experience.
one.
Yeah. Okay. Good night, everyone. Everyone listening, thanks for joining.
Thank
you.
you.
Good night, all.
See you, everyone.